The Ford F-150 Lightning truck is a very conservative but well-executed design. The F-150 is the best-selling truck in the world, so it's hard to argue with that success. It's an electric vehicle, and the main thing that stands out to me about this design is definitely the lightning bolt motif that you see throughout the entire vehicle. I think that these jagged chamfers and lines are a really clever way of abstractly expressing the fact that this is an electric truck. Lightning is essentially just unbridled electrostatic power, and it's a clever way to express power and strength in an electric vehicle. They were much more obvious about it in the logos, but I think that the exterior designers definitely tried to express it more subtly in the rest of the design. You also see lots of these chamfered elements in products that are meant for rugged durability, so OtterBox, DeWalt radios, that sort of thing. But these sorts of design features are usually very visually heavy. Ford's designers chose to have the lines in this converge and intertwine a little bit more. The lines are less rigid and straight, so they have a bit more visual movement, just like Lightning. Generally speaking, the last thing you want is for a vehicle to feel static or unmoving. Most other electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles are much more friendly in their approach. They're designed to look more like appliances rather than vehicles. Now, it's hard not to draw a comparison between this and the Tesla Cybertruck. They're both electric trucks under 40 grand. They both have several similar design elements. So, for example, they're both this really similar metallic silver. They both have these big light bars going across the front and back of the vehicle. And they utilize very similar chamfered and angular elements in their designs. The Cybertruck is obviously way more crazy in their approach. And, the Cybertruck kind of reminds me of that Iron Giant movie from several years ago. It's very big and clunky and powerful and imposing. But in contrast, this Ford F-150 feels more like the Iron Man you see in Marvel movies and comics. There's a lot more going on with the details and the surfaces. They're a lot more complicated, but as a result, it just feels a bit more refined and technical. I know that the Ford F-150 is a pretty safe design, it's pretty conservative, but you have to remember that Ford has a winning formula with this line of vehicles. Like I said earlier, it's the best-selling truck in the world. The F-150 line has been around for several decades, and Ford's designers have to respect and reference that heritage. They can't just come up with something completely new and different. Tesla's designers had a totally blank canvas and were given the opportunity to go nuts. By the way, if you're still watching at this point, you should totally subscribe. Helps me out, and you can always unsubscribe later if you change your mind. So if we look at the overall silhouette of the vehicle, it's dominated by very straight, blocky proportions. This has as much to do with the chassis and overall package as anything else. But Ford's designers chose to highlight that. One thing that's kind of interesting is that they really emphasize the hood of the vehicle by puffing it out and adding several character lines to emphasize it. Usually cars do this to highlight the power of the engine, which is right underneath the hood. But there's no engine to speak of under the hood. It's actually a front trunk. It's possible that the front of the vehicle needs to be puffed out for safety reasons, though. So, for example, God forbid you hit a pedestrian, there needs to be a sufficient amount of puffiness to cushion that hit. There also tends to be more chamfering happening at the bottom of the vehicle. This grounds the truck and gives it stability by focusing your eye at the base of the truck rather than the top of it. The last thing you want is for a truck to feel visually or functionally unstable. If we zoom in on some of the ultra tiny details, we see these four little things that look like rivets on the front bumper. I don't think these need to be here for any functional reasons since they're not on other F-150s. I think this was a choice by Ford's designers to give it that Iron Man toughness aesthetic, although who knows, they could just be there for purely functional reasons. I think the grille detail is really interesting in the way that the headlights and the grille assembly is sort of housed by these light bars to help make the truck feel more grounded and solid. When you combine all of these features into these blocky assemblies that all sort of fit together, it helps the truck to feel more strong and durable. There aren't really any components that sort of float around in isolation, visually speaking. Everything looks like it sort of fits together really solidly. Overall, the Ford F-150 Lightning is a very conservative design, but it's executed really competently. It's not going to change the way we look at design. There's no reason to mess with success. However, like any big company, if they continue to lean on past successes rather than continuing to innovate, they will have problems down the line. It's very common for companies to lean on what works until the competition passes them by and it's too late. I'm not saying that this is going to happen with Ford or any of the other big automakers, but it certainly wouldn't be unprecedented. One last thing I want to mention is that I know this analysis didn't really focus very much on the functional aspects of the truck. Form does follow function after all, but this truck is hard to get a hold of and function really needs to be evaluated in person. Anyway, I hope you found this review helpful and informative. Once again, if you did, leave a like and subscribe. It helps me out. Thanks a lot for listening, guys.